options. Let's go straight to options. So, have we got anybody in the room who's involved in real estate? No real estate agents? Really? First time for ages. They're very handy, but then they'll tell me all of the reasons why everything I say about contract is wrong. It's not wrong, it's just that real estate is absolutely laden with all of these other pieces of legislation that have changed it because it's very significantly governed. So I think real estate though is the best way to think about an auction. So most of you at some stage would have walked past, driven past big real estate agent signs for a commercial property. And it might say something like excellent retail space, could be a doctor's surgery. It usually has the acronym, subject to council approval, STCA, for the planning use, and then it might say something like 3x3 option terms. And what that usually means is, what we are effectively looking for is somebody who will enter into a 3-year lease for these premises, and we are going to provide them with an option to then extend that lease for another 3 years. 3 by 3 would usually mean 2 more times. So it's a 9-year, they contemplate a 9-year arrangement. And so an option basically means that at the end of the lease, at some period towards the end of the lease, the tenant can basically give a notice. In fact, the terminology is often a put option or a call option. So a put option means that they can put the notice in front of the landlord and say, in accordance with the terms of the option, we want to renew, we want another 3-year lease. So it's a right to extend, but no obligation to extend. Now, this is pretty simple. At the end of the day, an option, in order to be binding, is a contract. So because it's a contract, it needs to meet all of the elements of a contract, which means we need to have agreement. So the agreement will need to there needs to be an offer of an option which has been accepted, and that acceptance has been communicated. The offer itself needs to contain all of the things that we would need, including how much the rent is going to be, or what is the formula for calculating the new rent, and what are the conditions. So usually an option for a tenancy, for example, would say you can only exercise the option if you've paid your rent on time in the first 3 years or the subsequent 3 years, and that you've maintained the premises in accordance with the rules. So we'd have some certainty, we'd have all of those things in that offer of the option accepted. What is important here is it also needs consideration. So in addition to the rent that you pay for the first term of the lease, you need to pay, the tenant will need to pay something, there is a price for the promise to hold the option open, to hold the offer open. And so if the landlord goes and rents or enters into an agreement to rent those premises out to somebody else in a way that would conflict with your right to exercise the option, to put the option, then they are in breach not of the lease agreement but of the option agreement. It's a separate arrangement. Questions, concerns? Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense, but it's not what was in our textbook.
It's not what's in your textbook.
Our textbook.
Imagine that, I cannot actually recite the textbook. The list of my failings goes on and on and on.
Our textbook said that an option was sui generis.
Sui generis.
I don't know how to say the word, but like its own entity.
Yeah, well, I think I am saying that. So sui is, I'm not sure. It's kind of ridiculous to argue over the pronunciation of Latin because it's a dead language and nobody goes around speaking it, and if they do, quite seriously, they need help.
Yeah.
Don't you think? It's kind of like, so sui generis is how I would say it. So it's a contract of itself, and yes, so it is a contract of itself. So, and I think I'm saying that same thing. So you will have a lease, and now it's very rare in a lease scenario for somebody to give an option to someone who is not a tenant. But it does happen. It's not impossible for it to happen because it's a separate contract. We, most mornings at the moment, I wake up to Radio National and hear about, one of the first things I hear is what's happening on the futures market. So the futures market, which is kind of predicting what's happening with the economy generally, on the futures market they trade options. Basically what's happening is somebody is trading a right to buy corn or oranges or whatever it is at a particular price in the future, and somebody is selling their obligation to sell whatever it happens to be. One of the best ways to understand how options and futures at the same time work is to watch Trading Places, a movie from early 90s, it's probably actually early 80s, thinking it was Eddie Murphy before he got really vile, but it's a really good explanation of how things work. Yes?
This is like a foolish question.
There are foolish questions. I just do foolish answers, so go for it. Sorry, what's your name first?
Imogen.
Thank you.
So, these options, are they written down?
They can be.
Separate, but they don't have, they could be verbal, like it could be
So
someone.
they're a contract. So like any
So
other
it's the
contract.
same
Now,
deal.
if it relates to the sorts of things that will not be enforced unless there is a written instrument, then they need to be written down. Sorry, then I said unless at the beginning of that. If they relate to something like land, where the law says there needs to be writing before it will be enforced, it needs to be written down. But that isn't what is needed for it to create a contract. What we need for a contract is offer an agreement. So I might say to you, oh, how about this? I could say to you, this is all too hard. At the end of this semester, I am going to give up teaching and I would like to sell you this awesome clicker of mine for 10 cents. So I will give you the first right to buy this clicker for 10 cents at the end of the semester. If that was all that happened, I think I've made an offer. Let's assume you've accepted it. We're pretty clear of what the subject matter is. We know what the consideration or the price will be. We know when it's going to happen. But I haven't said, we haven't agreed at this stage. I've just said, I will let you be the first one to do it. That's an oral arrangement between us. That would likely not be binding because there's no consideration. But if we agreed right now that at the end of the semester, I'm not going to do it because I love this clicker very much, I need to be very careful, but if we agreed right now, this is yours, I'm offering it to you for 10 cents, you can pay me at the end of semester, and actually no, but you need to give me $1 now for the option, and that's will make money on this. If you gave me that $1, if we agreed on that, you've paid for the contract where I have agreed to have it open until the end of semester. At the end of semester, if you don't want it, you don't have to exercise your option. But at the end of semester, if you pay me the 10 cents, I have to hand over my most prized possession. Okay? Imogen's nodding, so hopefully that makes sense to those of you at home in your jammies. Do you have a question? Brandon, isn't it? Sorry, I'm going to work out who you are as go. Lapse of offers, do we need to talk about that? We have talked about reasonable time already. Come on. What's the cases? Yeah, sorry, I talked about all of that. And failure of condition we've also talked about. We're going to talk a lot more about the certainty aspects as we get to the end, but I just want to make sure you've got the broad concepts because you're going to need them for this little assignment that I have given you, or I'm about to give you at some stage tonight or tomorrow morning. Rejection. So offer is terminated on rejection. It cannot be revived. It can be replaced with exactly the same terms, but if you say no, if an offeree says no to an offer, or even if they try to vary an offer in some way, the original offer is dead and buried. It has lapsed. Doesn't stop the offeror from, I used the language before, reinstating, but technically they're just making a new offer on terms that are exactly the same as the terms that they made before. And when somebody seeks to vary an offer, so say, yes, I will accept, but we need to change the price, the amount of time, the colour, anything, that is called a counter offer. So, counter offer, Tin and Hoffman, Hyde and Wrench, the key cases, new offer on materially different terms. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Have you got any questions, concerns, frustrations, compliments?